This June was pretty rich on the new open source models. First we got Qwen, then Kimi K2.7 Coder, then MiniMax, now JLM just recently was released by ZAI. And all those open source models are getting closer and closer to the main labs like Anthropic and OpenAI. In some cases, they even beat some of those competitors. For example, on a long horizon task evaluation, JLM 5.2 beat GPT 5.5, beat Opus 4.7, and got pretty close to Opus 4.8. Fortunately, I didn't post results for Fable 5, which I would imagine would be a few percentage points ahead of Opus 4.8, but still the progress is quite remarkable. And same goes across all different benchmarks, even though GLM still did not get to the results of, let's say, Opus 4.8. In some benchmarks, it did beat, for example, Gemini 3.1 Pro, and got pretty close to either GPT 5.5 or Opus 4.8. I've even just recently seen the YC Combinator startup, which creates a product completely on the open source models, and they use JLM 5.2 as an orchestrator, then I think DeepSeek, the coding model, and so on. I've already reviewed, for example, MiniMax M3 in one of the previous videos. Here's the link. And in this video, I wanted to focus specifically on the recent open source models from the different Chinese companies, namely MiniMax, JLM, Qwen, and Kimi. So I was curious to compare all those open source models between each other. And I must say the results were not as good as I expected. Now, definitely, the price of all those open source models beats Frontier Labs. And quick remark here, all the models which I've used for this video are being hosted on the Fireworks. So all the API pricing is coming from there. However, I believe it is matching the API pricing of the official laboratories behind all those open source models. So the first task I gave to the models was to create a one-pager for a new bouldering gym opening in Singapore. No particular reason why it is bouldering. I also used the same prompt with Opus 4.8 just to compare the results and compare the costs and speed. And well, indeed, Opus 4.8 cost significantly more, right? In some cases, Opus cost around 20 times more or even higher compared to, let's say, Qwen. However, I should note that out of all those 5 models, only Opus decided to use image generation tool, which was available to all the models, actually, as part of the Zenflow tool suite, and actually generated a few nice images, which it later populated on the website. So the output of the Opus definitely felt more well thought through compared to other models. Although I should note that, for example, Kimi K2.7 did put also some images, but it didn't use image generation tool. It actually used them from the website called unsplash.com. And looking through the logs, I actually am not sure why did it get them from there. Maybe it did see them on some of the websites which it researched as part of the task. I'm not sure if unsplash.com photos are under copyrights, so be careful with that. For other models, especially my highest hopes were for JLM 5.2, and it actually produced quite a basic graphics. Although outside of that, of course, the website itself, the one-pager itself, looks pretty good. However, the visual for the hero section, I'm still not sure what it's supposed to be, like all those dots. Maybe it's like boulders. I would say the worst outcome, subjectively, of course, is the output of Qwen 3.7, which really looks like a very basic website. It did, of course, fit the purpose, fit the task, right? And I also didn't specify any requirements on the UI side, but comparing the output of other models, especially Opus 4.8, well, you kind of can see the sort of outlier, right? And in this case, it's Qwen 3.7 plus. And price-wise, to be fair, Qwen was the cheapest. It cost 6 cents, so I guess you get what you paid for. Here's all the websites side by side. I will leave it up to you to choose the winner. Here's also how much each model cost and how much time it consumed to create those websites. Next task, adding dark theme to the website, right? So in this case, I already have the code base, so the models just need to modify the existing code base, the existing styles, add the dark theme, add the dark theme toggle. All of them did complete the task. They all kind of had their own quirks. So for example, Kimi K2.7 just went all in with the tool calls. No thinking, no reflection, just tool call after tool call. It kind of reminded me of the time when Opus, I think it was Opus 4.6 came out after Opus 4.5, and Opus 4.6 was behaving kind of the same way. Actually even created this meme about tool calls go blur, and yeah, Kimi K2.7 actually quite heavily remind me of that time. On GLM 5.2 side, as one of the sort of favorites of this video, I would say it did a good job, although it got a bit confused in a few cases, especially like here, for example. It took a screenshot of the website in the dark theme, but then it says that it's an light theme. But otherwise, outside of that, all models did a pretty good job. They did verification, took a screenshots, verified that everything works. But other than that, simple task, and all the models did perform quite well. And now, third and final task, the larger task, is something that I already did in one of the previous videos, where I compared Fable, Opus 4.8, and Opus plus MiniMax on the task of rewriting my complete code base from Python and TypeScript into Rust. And here's the link to that video. On this video, I also decided to give MiniMax one more chance. Each model was running in auto workflow, so essentially they were all deciding on their own what they want to do. They created a plan for themselves and managed all the work on their own. Now, unfortunately, 2 out of 4 models were not able to complete the task because they went in the infinite loop. In this case, it was Kimi K2.7 and MiniMax M3. They did burn through some dollars for me, unfortunately, and especially in case of Kimi, it did like 1,200 tool calls. But again, without any thinking in the middle, it was just tool call after tool call. But at some point, I noticed that it was just reading the same file over and over, which looked weird. And when I looked at the history, it turned out that it was doing that for the last 200 tool calls. So I had to stop that experiment. And then MiniMax did do kind of similar thing. It went at the infinite loop, saying the same things over and over. So unfortunately, MiniMax also went out of the competition in this case. Now, out of the last 2 contenders, unfortunately, I can't say that either of them fulfilled that completely. They did produce somewhat working version to some extent, especially GLM 5.2. Of course, UI didn't match. Some functionality didn't match, but at least it was able to do some of the work, again, at a fraction of the cost compared to Opus, and especially Fable. And just as a recap from that video, here's the numbers for Fable and Opus. And then Qwen, while spent less time on this task, and especially significantly less dollars, just $2. Unfortunately, the output of Qwen was, despite its claim that the task is complete, well, you can see it on the screen. It's definitely far from being a one-to-one rewrite from the original code base, Python TypeScript, into Rust. And then one more fun or not so fun fact is neither GLM nor Qwen thought about adding gitignore to my repository. And after building the Rust project, unfortunately, I ended up with several thousand files in the Git history, which is also not ideal. So what's my final verdict? Well, out of those 4 models, I would say GLM and MiniMax look the best, even though MiniMax went into infinite loop on the Rust rewrite in this case. However, in my experience, outside of the experiments for this video, both GLM 5.2 and MiniMax M3 did work much better compared to what I've seen with Kimi and Qwen. However, still you can't expect the performance of frontier labs like OpenAI or Anthropic from those open source models. They are definitely getting better and better, no doubt there. However, they are still probably 1 or 2 generations behind. You can still use them, especially GLM 5.2 and MiniMax, to save on the costs, because you don't always need models like Opus for some simpler tasks. You can offload them to those open source models and get roughly the same results, but much cheaper.